corporate people were laughing at us, that podcasting was ham radio.
I'm a terrible futurist, so my track record is not great, which actually gives me a lot of freedom to make bold predictions.
I'm hedging my bets. I'm being very nice to my AI overlords just in case.
Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast.
All right, I am here with Lou Mongello, the host of. I don't even know how much I'm allowed to talk about your show without like an army of mouse-eared lawyers coming here. You've obviously made it 20 years without that happening. But before we get started, Lou, tell us a little bit who you are, what you do, where you came from, how we got here. What's the background?
Sure. I am Lou Mongello, and I am the host of WDW Radio, a podcast about all things Disney, which I've been doing for just about 20 years. In my past life, I was a lawyer from New Jersey, which are two things I ask that you don't hold against me. Was always in the service business, had this idea of making something once and reselling it. Wrote a book about Disney just to see if I could do it. The book turned into a site in a community, and in very early 2005, I asked Jeeves, like, what is a podcast? And launched the podcast, hoping that somebody would find it and listen. Long story longer, I now live right behind Magic Kingdom, and I get to share my passion for Disney in a variety of different formats, and then also work with other creators and solopreneurs and businesses trying to help them turn what they love into what they do.
Amazing. So without further ado, then, the most obvious question on my mind, why Disney?
So I've been going since November of 1971, like 3 weeks after the parks opened. But, my family always, we gather around the TV on Sunday nights and watch Disney movies on ABC and just loved it. And like the Griswolds, I got in the family truckster and drove down from New Jersey to Florida. And as time went on, going back year after year, I became fascinated by what it was about this place that was bringing us back. And I read everything that I could, sitting in the back of the station wagon, driving back and forth. And as time went on and I started to just go, by myself or with friends or with girlfriends and wife, I really started to get a better appreciation and understanding and sort of look at it from a different lens. And then because this was a place that just brought me so much joy, and when I had this idea of writing a book, I really just set out to write the book that I wanted to read. I love the details and the history and the minutia, and there was no Walt Disney World trivia book. So I just set out to see, can I write a book? Can I get it published? Can I sort of be validated by somebody else who is willing to put their name on my work, never thinking beyond that it would grow to anything else.
So knowing what you know now, book, 800 podcast episodes, which is harder, more challenging, more unlikely to happen?
I think there are no more gatekeepers to writing a book. There are so many platforms that will help you and platforms and professionals that will help you get the idea out of your mind and onto paper. When I was writing my book, you had to find a publisher. You possibly had to find an agent. And then look, I literally in my file cabinet, I have 47 rejection letters from publishing houses that said, no, you don't have a book yet. Well, I'm like, I can't have a book yet because you're not giving me a chance to write a book. And I think the takeaway lesson is you only need one yes, which is really cool because I only got one yes from a publisher. But that led me down a journey that I never thought. And I think a book is an important asset to have depending on what your business is. I think a lot of times we can write a book, not necessarily hoping that we sell 1 million books, which is very difficult to do. But I think the book is the new business card. It is a way to show people authority and credibility by having this thing in your hands.
Yeah, I know somebody who publishes with a co-author, and he takes 0% of the sales. His co-author gets 100% of the sales. And his theory is basically like, well, I know the average lifetime value of a customer of mine is $1.2 million. So it doesn't really matter how many copies we sell. If I get 100 customers out of this, I'm doing okay from the book.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, though. Today, so obviously go back when you wrote the book, which was, sorry, what year again? 2004?
So I started writing it in 2000. I went down the basement in 2003. I came out with a book in 2004.
Okay. So back then it wasn't a business card, right?
Mhm.
Back then, because the publishing was so hard to do, as you mentioned. 47 rejection letters. How does one persevere through 47 rejection letters? Because, if it was me, I probably would stop at 46.
Right. That's
Right?
right.
Like, how do you know when you're done?
Yeah. Look, so being the Disney guy, right? So Walt Disney was rejected like bank loans and investments like 300 times. And it's the same thing. Like, okay, Walt, at one point do you say, maybe this is not the right idea? And it's
Yeah.
very disheartening. It is very disheartening because you have this idea that you think is going to be the next, big bestseller, or at least appeal to the tens of millions of Disney fans out there. So I think it goes to the importance of, like, if you don't believe in yourself and what you are doing, how can you possibly convince other people to either buy your product, buy your service, come on your team, hire you for a speaking gig, whatever it might be? So it did very much teach me the idea of passion and patience and perseverance.
Mm. And is that so in my brain? Because I obviously, anybody who's done anything has persevered and been through obstacles. And I think probably what I learned along the way is that you build up, the more rejections you get, the more resolute you become.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I would think, and you tell me if I'm crazy, that when you sat down, you probably didn't think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to get 50 rejection letters and that's okay. Right? Like, the first one was probably a gut shot or a dagger through the heart. And then you go, but fuck it. I'm going to keep going. Like, I don't think what I'm asking is, there's no way you sat down at the beginning and said, no matter how many rejection letters it takes, I'm going to keep going.
Mm-hmm. No.
But along the way, you probably found that your number was at least 47. So how many people do you think, start a business, fail? We're just one rejection letter away from not failing.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't realize how close you really are, right? We've seen graphics and memes to that point, but because when you get that first rejection, you're right, it is a gut punch, because you're like, oh, this is it. This is the $1 million idea. There's 30 million people that visit Walt Disney World every year. Clearly, people are going to be banging down my door. I'm going to just sort of have, the king's ransom monopoly, sort of just choose whoever I want. So, you get one, you're like, okay, well, these people are idiots. I think that first rejection, it's very hard not to take it personally and be like, well, wait a second, maybe this is a stupid idea. And then the more rejection letters you get, the more you start to question the validity of your concept. And you're like, whew, thank God I didn't quit my job as a lawyer just yet, because maybe this idea didn't necessarily do it. And I'm like, well, I'll just keep going until I run out of opportunities. Like, I'll just sort of, so I literally went to Barnes and Noble, right? Which, for those of you who don't remember, big stores with lots of books in them. I went to the travel section. I sat on the floor. I pulled all the travel books I could sort of off the shelves. I turned them over and wrote down, like, literally hand wrote the name of every single publishing house, like big and small. And like, somebody along the way has got to sort of see my vision. And again, I owe everything to the one company that did say, yeah, we see what you're trying to do here. And I signed a 3-book deal just because. And then once you get that, you're off to the races.
Sure. And you mentioned you coach a lot of solopreneurs, people who are kind of trying to accomplish the same thing that you did. You had a backup plan. You were still a lawyer, it sounds like, at the time. People seem to be split down the middle, but is it better to be all in, no turning back, burn the boats? Or do you think there's inherent value in having a tiny bit of a safety net for people when they're pursuing something like that?
So I'm going to give you the typical lawyer answer and say yes to both, right? So, because I think one part of the reason why I do what I do is because I didn't have anybody to reach out to. I mean, I had a very supportive system around me of immediate and extended family. My friends didn't really understand what I was doing, but sometimes we don't have people that get it, or this thing that we are trying to do, or this vision that we have, or how are you going to take this thing and eventually monetize? Like, what's your business plan? I never sat down with a business plan. So I want to sort of help be that person for somebody because I have walked that walk. I understand that journey. I understand the self-doubt that comes in with it, as well as the doubt that you get from external, sometimes trusted sources as well. So I do think there needs to be multiple, usually leaps of faith, sometimes small, sometimes large. For me at one point when I said, all right, look, I need to be where what I do is. Flying back and forth from New Jersey with young kids at home is just not making any sense. When I sold my house and brought money to my closing, which is not the way it's supposed to work, and rented a house that I have never even seen before and didn't know how I was going to make money doing this. That was a massive leap of faith. And the reason why I did it was out of fear. And when I say fear, it wasn't fear of failure, but it was fear that 5, 10, 20 years down the road, I'd look back and go, I wonder what would have happened if I would have tried to do that. So that fear of regret was a big motivator for me. And when I did this, and a lot of people said that I was crazy, and the people who were my friends at the time, who aren't my friends anymore, said, like, wait a minute, man, I get the fact that you've got your little book and you sit in your room and you talk to yourself about Mickey Mouse for an hour or so a week on your little podcast. But you mean to tell me you're leaving a really good job that you worked your whole life for with insurance benefits? You're going to lose money on your house. You're going to do this thing and you're going to try and figure out how to do it. And I'm like, yeah, man, isn't that awesome? And like, I give you 6 months and you're going to be back here like looking for a job again. That type of negativity is not very helpful. So
rejection letter number 1 on your plan.
Yeah, sometimes getting it from your friends too, and sometimes they do it because it's not something that they would be able to do, or maybe they don't necessarily have the wherewithal to do it. So I did take that leap of faith, but I did have a little bit of a parachute. As I was sort of making this jump, I knew that I had enough money to pay my rent. My family could eat 2 or 3 times a week for X amount of months, and then if it didn't work, like people say, well, what do you do for a living? And my answer is whatever it takes. And that's not sort of just like meant to be a joke, but I was like, look, man, if I need to go and flip burgers or do whatever, I'll do whatever I need to do in pursuit of this dream until I find that, all right, maybe this is just not the right path, but I'm at least going to go all in on giving 100% to it.
Yeah. That sounds like you knew in your heart of hearts that failure really wasn't going to happen. Like, on one hand, you're saying failure wasn't an option, but on the other hand, I hear a whole lot of like, yeah, but I kind of know that this is like I'm convinced that this is going to work.
I think hopefully deep down, like I knew that I had to try it, but I didn't honestly know how it was going to happen. I was just starting to monetize. Like when I had some little like affiliate things here and there. Everything changed for me one day, one phone call. Like my wife comes, this is what a phone used to look like. She's comes running in with the phone, and there's somebody on the other end. They're like, hey, I'm from XYZ company. I've been listening to the podcast. Love what you do. What do you charge for a sponsorship? And it was like in slow motion. I was like, what do I? And I said, let me get back to you. I'll put together a proposal. And I hung up the phone and I went to ask Jeeves again. I'm like, how much do you charge for a podcast sponsorship? But that was a validation of, hey, wait a minute. Maybe there is a way that I didn't even know what the word monetize was at the time, but maybe I can monetize this thing that I just, my why was just because I love Disney. And I just sort of loved being able to share it and meet with other people about it, never thinking this was the first step towards a completely new trajectory in terms of business.
Mm. And that phone call is also a like place and time kind of thing. Because one of the things I'm talking about this season is, 20 plus years into podcast now, where do we come from? Where are we now? Where are we going? And, the one out of the blue phone call that you didn't think to monetize, not a lot of people are still in that frame of reference for podcasting, and not to jump too far forward, but how do you see the idea of monetization today versus that first phone call that you got?
So I'm laughing because I remember back during that time and starting to go to these tiny little podcasting and new media conferences when it was, the new bright shiny object. monetizing and podcasting, like those two words were not supposed to be like pulled together. Like you're supposed to be doing it like for the purity of the art form.
How dare you corrupt my art?
Right. Like if you were monetizing, like you were the outlier. Like you're not supposed to be monetizing this because it was at that time kids in the basement, just sort of, very grassroots. There were, the corporate people, the network people, the bigger people were laughing at us. That podcasting it was ham radio, and it was just a bunch of kids sort of doing stuff. And you go play with your thing. We're going to continue to do terrestrial radio and satellite radio and TV and also the big media. Now look how the landscape has very much shifted. And those podcasts that are at the top of the charts are those networks, are those big brands, are those sort of corporate behemoths to a certain degree, and a lot of celebrities who, very much did not play in that space earlier. But from a monetization perspective, it was a very difficult road to hoe back then because we were creating the path. We were all sort of figuring out what monetization could and would eventually look like. And now I think there's incredible tools and opportunity that makes monetizing podcast, your content, whatever it is, not easy, but simpler.
Sure. Like, I think also what I've noticed is, back then, whoever that first phone call was, internally, they at some point are taking risks, right? Like, you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but I think we should advertise here on this thing called a podcast. And so much of business is cover your ass that, anybody doing it early, they were putting their own career on the line to start, advertising on podcasts. Whereas today you said, hey, we should advertise on a podcast. In 99% of companies now, that's not a controversial thing that might cost you your job. It's just, okay, which one? Which one, how much, what's the creative going to be, blah, 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 blah. But, that first hump of like, what do you mean you're going to take our hard-earned money and give it to this guy in his basement or girl in their basement, playing around with this ham radio stuff? I feel like that I don't know what the chicken and egg looks like there, but for sure the people who were writing checks early, I think was a bit of a leap of faith.
Without a doubt. And I owe a lot to that person who, by the way, and this was in 2007 or so. It was like when I got my very first sponsor. A few years ago, I get a check in the mail from her for like $50. And she's like, somebody heard, I guess we must have had like an affiliate relationship in addition to, the money. She said, oh, I told you I'd give you $50 for every sale. So, and somebody said, listen, I went back and listened to show number 39 and heard you on it. So here you go, man. Here's your $50.
Yeah.
But I've had a travel agency partner. I don't even call her a sponsor. She really is a partner at this point for coming up on 18 years, who I'm very grateful to for a lot of reasons. But she understood very early on that she was building her brand and sort of getting name recognition and putting a voice and a face to something that would have been very faceless for her and a differentiator for her. And we've never had, I'm a really bad lawyer. We've never had like a written agreement because we just sort of modify and go with what sort of helps us rise the tide for all of our boats.
Mm-hmm.
But early on, I think you're right. It was a leap of faith because there was no, I don't even know if CPM was even like a thing, but there was no way to really track, well, how well is my ad performing? What is going to be my ROI in the short and long term? I had to figure that out and help convince people, listen, I'm going to leave your ad, which I'm going to do a live read. I'm going to endorse because I believe in you and what you're, I'm going to leave that baked in there as this previous story evidences forever. So it's not like it's going to run for a month and then this thing disappears. So there was over the years a lot of convincing. At one point, I was still in New Jersey and I literally flew down to Orlando. And when I say that I went door to door, like knocking on the doors of like local restaurants and hotels, trying to make them understand what I was doing, the value that I could bring, the ROI they could get. it's a very humbling experience, but I think
47 rejections later.
right. Yeah, but when you get it to your face, where people are like, I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know what this podcasting thing is. It's still the Wild West. Nobody's going to listen to a podcast. It was a very different time.
In your mind, if somebody today was in the same boat, same model, was going door knocking tomorrow, pitching restaurants in Orlando, does it go the same, or now is the rejection to success ratio different just because of where podcasting is in terms of mainstream acceptance today?
I think it's very different, but I still think it comes with its own set of challenges, because I think when I work with people, the question I make them have to identify is why you. What's your differentiator? What is going to set you apart? Don't just give me the numbers or sometimes the vanity metrics. Like, explain to me so you can explain to somebody else why it should be you. Why, especially for things like podcasting, why should I invest in this thing that I can't see, I can't touch, I can't sort of necessarily measure other than downloads? How do I know what the ROI is going to be? I've been able to refine and hone that messaging over the number of years and start to realize the data that does matter. Like, so for me, I can show numbers and things like that all day, but years ago I surveyed my audience. And when I go to a potential sponsor and say, look, the only number that matters is that 94% of my audience has bought a product or service that I've advertised on the show, that's the one that convinces them. That's the one that
Sure.
sort of moves the needle.
Yeah. And for people that are starting out, what does make a good story about why you?
I hate the fact that authenticity has become a marketing buzzword, right? Because you're right. Your story is going to be the thing that separates you, right? Whether it's our backstory, how you got here, stories about you and your business, or success stories, that's the thing that is going to be different. Look, it's the reason why we remember lines from movies that we saw 30 years ago, but we can't remember, I always use, like, my kids, like, you can't remember the math assignment that you had this morning because there's no story attached to it. But people do remember stories. And I think getting your sort of signature story and signature messaging and understanding what your differentiator is a thing that's going to set you apart.
Yeah, you used a word in there that I always listen for, which is different. And we have a phrase internally like, being different is better than being better. Which is that, right? Because people will come to us and be like, well, what makes you guys better? And I go, I don't know that we're better. Like, that's something for you to figure out, but I can tell you why we're different. And if you hear why we're different as being better, then there's a good chance that we're a good fit. If you hear why we're different as being worse, then we're probably not going to do a lot of business together. But I don't know that I could ever convince somebody that we're better than our competition, but I think we do a very good job of explaining why we're different. And
different is better because you're going to find your people, right? Whether it's a service-based business. Look, I think we need to become magnets for the people that we want to attract. I don't want, nor do I expect, every Disney fan to be a listener, part of the community, part of the, sort of the ecosystem. But I want the quote unquote, I think if you have the quote unquote right people in there, that's how you're able to scale and grow and more importantly, be consistent and have longevity too.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about your audience because I feel like, and you tell me if this resonates with you, you're in an interesting spot because on one hand, it's very niche, extremely niche, right? Like within there's podcasts, then there's travel, then there's regional travel, then there's city level travel. Like it's about as niche as you can get. But on the other hand, I mean, you would know the number. When I think about like, well, how many people are ever going to be interested in that niche? I don't know, hundreds of millions. Which makes me like want to go rethink everything else I think is niche, right? It's like, oh, that's super niche. Like how many? Oh yeah, but it's 100 million niche people or whatever. Like what is your, starting at the high level, what is like the potential Disney goer audience, and then what is that percentage of them that should be followers of you and WDW Radio?
Well, I'll start off by saying I think for a lot of people, when they start doing this and they start going down that mindset road, they make the mistake of, and I'll admit that I did it too, like when I wrote my first book, you're like, all right, if 30 million people, and I'm sort of using a roundabout now, it's probably closer to, 40, 50 million now. If 40 million people go to Walt Disney World every year, well, all I need is 1% of those people to buy my book. Like I'm set. And that's very much not how it happens.
Yeah.
I learned that very quickly from my as soon as I signed
every venture capital pitch ever, right? Like there's 7 billion people on the planet. If only 1%,
whenever I see that on Shark Tank, I'm like, dude, you're sunk. Like, that's not the metric to use. And I realized, look, I'm not trying to get every single Disney fan, every single Disney Parks fan, every single Walt Disney World fan, because even within the people that love and visit Walt Disney World, there are niches to sub niches that really sort of niche. And, I think the more niche you get, the more opportunity you create for yourself. So when somebody says, and look, the Disney space is a very noisy, very, very crowded space now. People say, I'm thinking about starting a Disney podcast, starting a Disney blog. We have this conversation about, well, why you? What makes you different? Who are you trying to reach? Like, talk to me about the one person. And if it's every person that's going to Walt Disney World, I'm like, that's not niche enough. Like, you still have to continue to go down. So for me, I'm a very positive person. I do a very positive show. I like talking about the things that make us happy about going to the parks and be a distraction from all the nonsense going on in the real world. And my goal is to enhance your enjoyment and appreciation of the parks and cruise line. And it's not just Walt Disney World, but I do Disneyland and I do the parks overseas, which opens up opportunities for me too, to travel and create experiences and shared experiences with the audience as well. And I think that's where people get sort of lost. Instead of sort of focusing on the one very sort of targeted focus, like put your blinders on thing that you should be doing. They are either chasing somebody else that is successful doing it some other way, or trying to be all things to all people, which you cannot.
Sure. And, within the obviously, yes, there are many, I'm sure, sub niches. I feel like Reddit, you can click indefinitely. It narrower and narrower. But for my non very Disney focused brain, Disney's pretty niche. Mm-hmm. Or Disney World specifically is pretty niche. How many episodes are you up to now? 800 and...
Yeah, I did a show for about a year with a partner I had, and we did I think we did close to 100 there, and I'm on 8 something now.
Okay, now tell the truth. 900 episodes in. Is it harder to be that authentic word and to get as excited about something you've talked about 50, 500, 5,000 times? Like how much of it is now persona mode versus non-persona mode?
So I'm happy you asked me that, because it goes back to what I said before about authenticity. Like, I still freaking love what I do every single day. Like, the day this stops being fun for me is the day I stop doing it. And 20 years in, like, I've never repeated an episode. I've never repeated a topic, because there's a lot of different ways to sort of approach all the different things. And Disney is this place, it is this brand that's constantly evolving, right? There's always something new and different to talk about. And I think one of the reasons why I love this medium so much is because it is so very personal, and it's very intimate. Like, you're literally and figuratively in someone's ears. And I don't think you can fake it. I think people can tell. And my audience, my community, because the community is the heart and soul of what I do. Like, they can tell. So I've been doing live video in addition to the podcast every Wednesday for 17 years. They can instantly tell, hey, you feeling okay? You don't look right. You don't sound right. The same thing on the podcast. They can hear the tone of your voice, the rhythm, the cadence, the excitement, whatever it is, which I love, because it's such a transparent medium. And I think live video even more so, because you can't do it over again, right? You can't do 17 takes to make sure you look and sound the right way. I'll tell you another very quick story. So I've been doing monthly meetups every month in Walt Disney World and when I travel since January 2008. And it's not so people can come and meet me. It's so that I can meet you, so I can look you in the eye and shake your hand and give you a hug and say thank you for listening. A number of years ago, I'm chatting with somebody and I'm answering a question. And he's like, hey, Lou, I got to stop you for a second. And I was like, yeah, man, what's up? He goes, I've been listening to you for years. I have your audio tours. I've been doing all those things. And I've been listening to you on the podcast. And, on the show, like you're so nice and you're so positive, all those things. And I came to the meet and I didn't know what to expect. And you're like the same person, like in real life that you are on the show. And I sort of looked at him quizzically and I'm like, well, do you think I was going to be like, an a-hole like in real life? He goes, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know if the person that I was listening to on the show is the same person that is in real life. And he's like, you're exactly the same. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me because I think for a lot of people and creators too, there is this sort of veil of non-transparency between the persona that they put out, whether it's on Instagram or even in video, that I've always sort of questioned, like, well, why do you have to feel like, well, as soon as I walk out the door, I have to sort of put on this costume. I have to put on this like fake persona. You just be who you genuinely are, and you either like me or you don't. But like, this is who I am, and if I'm for you, cool. If not, there's 10,000 other creators talking about, similar stuff.
Sure, I get that. I guess my mental model for this always goes to like musicians. I don't know why, right? But like, sorry, if you're Neil Diamond, you really have to be a persona to get that up to play Sweet Caroline again for the
right.
60 trillionth time.
Right,
and like, or put differently, of course you're excited to be on stage. Of course he's still excited to play to a crowd. Of course there's all that. But the experience he wants the audience to have is not that he's like a 5% happy to play Sweet Caroline for the 50,000th time. He wants them to know that he's 110% just as happy as they are to hear it, he is to sing it. And that has to be a little bit of a like, I am a persona. I like, and the second he gets off stage, he is probably not nearly as excited to talk about Sweet Caroline as he was 30 seconds ago when he was in full stage mode. So on one hand, I think it's the medium, and I think you hit the nail on the head, which I hadn't put together, which is like the non-repetitiveness of the medium, right? And it's not like, meeting a drive time radio host who for 365 days in a row had to be just as excited about today's top news story. And when you meet them on the bus, they're not that excited about today's top news story. In fact, they don't care about today's top news story, and they, aren't that same person. So
I did get a sense of that. So years and years ago, when I very first started, I had these, and I still do, they're audio walking tours of the parks. And people used to reach out to me and say, hey, I'd love to just walk Magic Kingdom with you. Like, can I just hire you for the day to walk? And I'm like, well, that's interesting and weird all at the same time. And I'm like, well, let me just throw it out there and see. I'm like, nobody's going to, and all of a sudden I was getting booked like multiple times a week to give personal tours because, again, we're all in the relationship business, and they hear you on the podcast, they watch the video, they feel like they have a relationship with you. And that's exactly what I want people to feel. I'm talking to one person, and it's the one person that's listening. So I would get hired to do these guided tours of the parks, which were not scripted. I would very much sort of read the family, read whoever it was I was with. But there's the same stories that you have to tell and maybe the same jokes. And I remember there was one point I'd booked like 4 tours back to back to back over 4 days in the middle of August, like in Walt Disney World, which you may or may not realize it's 112 degrees with 97% humidity. By day 3, like, you're exhausted. And the River of Poo joke in Liberty Square, like, you've got to deliver it like you've never delivered it before, because for that family, for that kid, that is the very first time they're hearing it. And I always tell people, like, you need to care about you need to care at scale. You need to care about every single person and deliver, 1,000%, because that may be their first or one or only interaction with you.
Right. And say more about that. Is that a mental shift? Is that something that really only some people are capable of doing? Like, how do you get from the gap between people who are able to do that and people who aren't?
I think it's either in your DNA or it's not. I don't think you can fake it. So for me, like I do my live show every Wednesday night. And look, man, there's some Wednesday nights that, it's 5:00. You're like, well, what am I going to talk about tonight? Like, I'm really not feeling it. Like, I didn't shower today. I've been like on the phone all day, and I just show up and I'm unshaven and I'm in a hat. And when I start, like, all of a sudden I come to life again because I feed off the energy. It's why I love live video so much, because as podcasters and content creators, so often we record the thing, we put it out there, and then we just wait. Like, then we wait and hope that a small percentage of people respond in some way, whether it's in a Facebook group or on a social post, or somebody, takes the time to maybe email you about how that show impacted them. But with live video, like, it's immediate. So that sort of like fills my cup instantly. And there's times that I was like, should I just cancel tonight? Like, do we just not feel it? But one, I need to show up because I know that other people are going to show up, because we're creatures of habit and consistency is key. They know every Wednesday at 7:30, that's, where they get together, not just to see me, but see each other. But I don't know that it does that for everybody. Some people are more introverted. Some people are maybe lower energy, whatever it might be. But for me, I still get that rush. And like I said earlier, the day that I stop feeling the way that I do about creating and interacting is the way that is when I start looking to do something else.
And what would that be? What does something else look like?
I'm spinning a lot of plates all at once. So I don't sleep a lot. And I'm very, caffeinated early in the morning, because I've got everything I do on the Disney side of my business and everything I do on the business side in terms of speaking and coaching and courses. And I do live, small live events and things like that too. So I always have a lot of things that I can put my attention towards, and then, the 10 other ideas that are sitting up on the whiteboard for years. So I'm always looking to do what's next, which doesn't let me get, physically and metaphorically sedentary at all. Like, I think you always have to be innovating, which is not just great for your audience, but I think it's great for you as well.
Right. And I want to jump to momentum and workshops and stuff, but there's a question that I think is interesting. So, do you think you were a podcaster trapped in a lawyer's body, or are you now a lawyer trapped in a podcaster's body? Like, those are two very extreme ends of the spectrum.
So, hindsight being 2020, I think I've realized a couple of things over the years. I think one, I've always just wanted to help people. So I was a lawyer. I did plaintiff's work, right? I wanted to help people who were having a problem and came to me because they needed assistance. I had an IT consulting company on the side. I've always been spinning a lot of plates, right? So I'd be in court in the morning, and then at a lumberyard, like in my suit, running network cable in the afternoon. I would go back to my office. I'd see clients till 7, go home, inhale my dinner, and then go home and do web development until 2:00 in the morning. So I always had something, multiple different irons in the fire. Right. So I've always wanted to help people. I wanted to help people have a better Walt Disney World vacation. Now I want to help entrepreneurs do their things. But I also think that, so when I first started college, I was actually a theater major, right? I did theater a lot in high school. And I'm like, I would watch And Justice for All with Al Pacino. I'm out of order. You're out of order. So I'm like, I want to be a trial attorney. Like, this is what I thought it was going to be. So I think that there is a little bit of performance-based aspect to what I do. I'm comfortable up on stage. I'm comfortable up in front of a camera. I'm comfortable behind a microphone. That's not the same for everybody, right? You have to find not just where you think your audience is, but you have to deliver content in the way that not just they are comfortable consuming it, but you are as well. And I'm fortunate and I'm grateful and I'm blessed that I feel comfortable in these different mediums where I'm able to sort of put myself out there, warts and all.
Sure. So, talking about those, entrepreneurs, people, other ways you can help people. Talk to me about momentum running workshops, coaching people. First and foremost, you seem very driven by the impact you make on other people. So what's the chemically inside your body, what's the difference that you feel between, hey, I heard from somebody who really enjoyed that show and it made their trip amazing and blah, 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 versus coaching somebody on developing themselves or their business, and it's not really about you, it's about them growing, as opposed to getting feedback on your creative work. What's the satisfaction difference between those two things?
So I've always loved going to conferences, and I'm an introverted extrovert. Like if I would go to a conference, I would just sit there by myself. I wouldn't sort of inject myself into conversations and things like that. And I'd go to conferences where there's 10 tracks going on at once and you're running around trying to figure out who do I go see. And I literally, like, I'm not kidding when I tell the story, like I still have the notebook on my desk. I left a conference. I took all these notes. I was all excited. I was going to get home and do all these things. And I had this list of things to do, and you come home and life gets in the way and you don't do it. And I keep this notebook as a reminder on my desk, like the importance of getting started and getting the work done and being held accountable. So I never wanted to create another 3,000 person conference. I wanted to create something where it's 50 people in one room where I can hear your story and work with you one-on-one and in small group environments. So you're not just leaving with a notebook full of ideas, like you're doing the work in the room. It's why I call it momentum, because I think once you start that first domino falling, the rest fall a lot easier, right? Getting started is so very difficult. And because when I started, yes, I had my immediate family who was supportive. They didn't really necessarily understand what I was doing, but I didn't have somebody to go to say, I'm struggling with this. How do I do this? What do you think of this idea? And many of us who are solopreneurs, we work out of our houses by ourselves. It can get very, very lonely and frustrating. I mean, the cats are awesome, but they don't give me a lot of positive feedback and when I need it. So I wanted to create a place, an environment that you can go where that it would be an encouraging place where you'll do the work, you'll learn a lot, and hopefully come out different on the other side. Because that is incredibly rewarding for me as well. To see those light bulbs go off, like that's it, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, something that I keep hearing people say, and I keep noodling in my mind, is this concept that maybe in some sort of past pre-technology, pre-internet, pre-something world, ideas were like the hard part. Maybe, I don't know if they ever were, but like today an idea is worthless. Like 99.99999% of all success is execution. And like that's sometimes I'll have young tech entrepreneurs coming to me and either talking about pitch decks or just sharing like, well, I don't want to give away my idea. Like people need, like they should sign an NDA. And I'm like, what? Like, you think the idea is the hard part? Are you serious right now? I say that because I actually recently heard a story about when the new CEO took over at GitHub. Normally day one, you start doing, I think it was GitHub. Somebody correct me if I get this wrong. But, normally day one, new CEO, you step in, you're meet and greets, handshakes, get to know you. This is my vision, blah, blah, blah. And the story that I heard was, first meeting, he sat down and said, okay, we're going to go through the customer support queue and we're going to solve 5 issues today. And it's like, oh, we're going to do actual work. That's interesting. I wasn't prepared to do actual work here at the office today. How did that come to you as a inspiration of like, what I actually want is people not just talking about progress, but making progress in the room?
I think it goes to 20 some odd years ago when I wrote my book, and the reaction I heard from, I've been thinking about writing a book too. And I hear that same thing. I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about starting a podcast. I'm like, well, it's a Walt quote. The way to get started is to quit talking and start doing. Like you need to start. So I think practical, like my conferences and the way I work with people is not like, you can do it. I believe in you. Go like follow your dreams. Like that's all great too. But like you do the work in the room. So this past Momentum last weekend, I had somebody come in. I think everybody does have a book in them. I think we all have something to teach that maybe we even take for granted. It wasn't just theoretical, like, oh, you should write a book, and here's the reasons why. Like, no, you're going to start doing the work to get your ideas down and figure out what that chapter outline looks like. I think everybody has a course in them too. Same thing. I think it's a course is even maybe a smaller bite of the big elephant. All right, let's ideate what your courses are going to look like. Let's look at what those modules are going to be, so that when you walk out, that notebook that you have doesn't just have, I should write a book. It's, wait, I've got my first 5. I know what my first 5 modules are going to be for my course. I can go home and record it this week. Like, that's the difference maker. And when I see people leaving, like, I can't wait to get home and just start working on this thing. Well, yeah, because you've got, 25% of the work already done. And now it's just a matter of continuing to move forward.
It reminds me of that inspiration is for amateurs kind of quote, right? It's like professionals show up and work. A professional painter shows up every day at 9 and starts painting. Amateur painters are like, well, I'm waiting to figure out what I'm going to paint. And when all of these things all come together, that is when I'll create my course.
Yeah.
And it's like a borderline perverse form of procrastination, right? Like I'm going to prepare to do so long as to put off the doing for so far away.
The procrastination paralysis. And sometimes, look, man, I mean, sometimes it's just excuses. Like, sometimes it's just, we make up excuses like, well, I've got to get, and look, I'm guilty of it too. I'm guilty of as soon as I do this, I'll get to that. As soon as I wheel just keeps on like going down the road in front of me, and like, all right, enough with the excuses. Like, you need to start. Don't tell me you don't have time to write your book. Like, get up a half hour earlier and write 500 words a day. I had a coaching client, same thing. And he's like, I just can't get started. I'm like, listen, man, what time do you get up in the morning? 6 o'clock. Set your alarm for 5:30, write 500 words a day. And I would get up and I'd set my alarm and I would text him in the morning. And I'd be like, hey man, come on, you can do this. Like, get your 500 words written. After a while, my wife is like, who are you texting at 5 o'clock? Like, I'm sitting right here. And I saw him at a conference a couple of years later, and this guy runs up and he gives me a hug from behind and he puts his book in front of him. And I still get like choked up as I think about it. And he's like, I did it. Like, I wrote my book because I got up every morning to do it. And that's the kind of results that you want and you hope for.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you on the spot again for the same question. What's more rewarding internally? Is it that feeling of him putting his arms around you and saying, look what I did as a result, look at my creative output as a result of your coaching? Or is it somebody saying, I loved your creative content so much, it was amazing? Are they the same feelings? Are they different? Are they subtly different?
They're different. I'm going to give you the two sides of the answer, because like on the Disney side, look, man, I talk about Mickey Mouse, right? I talk about Disney. I talk about, theme parks, but I always say you never know who's listening, and you never know how what you're doing is going to impact the person on the other side. And I don't talk about heavy stuff, but I have gotten emails, physical letters, packages in the mail, and face-to-face conversations from people that say, because you're a podcast, I got through, my chemotherapy treatments. Because of your podcast, I decided not to end my, like, crazy heavy stuff that you just can't fathom when you're sitting there talking about, reviewing a theme park attraction.
The River of Pooh.
Right, exactly. But thank you. But when you are working with somebody and you see that light bulb go off, or they hand you that thing, and again, momentum is not a like cheerleady, woo-woo-y kind of thing. But at the end, I have everybody get up and they talk about, the one thing that they learned or the one thing that they're going to do. And this past momentum, like, I should have bought Kleenex, man. There was a lot of tears, like genuine tears from like girls and guys, and saying, this has changed my life, because like, this may make me a bad businessman, but like, there's nothing better than that. Like, there's nothing better than just getting that feeling that you were able to have a small positive impact on somebody's life that is going to potentially change their direction and their family. And there's like, because as we get older, we start to think about things like legacy. Like, what am I leaving behind me? I don't want to just leave, 1,000 podcast episodes about Disney, but hopefully having a positive impact on the people that I've touched.
Well, with that in mind, can we talk about Dream Team for
Sure.
a little bit? For those of you who don't know, what's the Dream Team project? Where did it come from?
So when I was writing my first book, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and every day for however many months, we drove from New Jersey into Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York. And as we were approaching where he would go to get his treatment, we would have to pass the pediatric floor, and it obviously still very much impacts me. And I says, I want to do something for these kids, right? Obviously, there's such a connection between Disney and family and children. And I said, look, raising money for research is great, but it's not going to impact these kids. And I literally remember like the day walking by, I was like, I want to do something that is add a charitable aspect to what I do, to a wish granting organization. I worked with Starbright, a local organization first, and then moved on to Make-A-Wish. And I said, look, I'm just going to take a portion of the proceeds from every book that I sell, everything that I ever do, and give it to wish granting organizations. From there, it was fascinating to see that sometimes just people just need something to sort of attach to, right? They want to help, but maybe they don't know how. They see you doing something and they take inspiration from it. So I ran my first and only like half marathon in Walt Disney World in 2008 with my wife and one other person. That has since grown to a running team of 600 and some odd people around the world that all raise money for Make-A-Wish. We've done charity auctions. We do a lot of things. My partner donates money to Make-A-Wish. We've raised $550 some odd $1,000. Like, you want to talk about making a real difference in the lives of people. And at my meets of the month, usually in January, I work with Make-A-Wish, and they actually bring the family to the meet of the month. And you want to talk about us being able to make the connection between where does what we're doing, like who does it really affect? Who are those human beings that it's truly impacting? And I think for the family that has the wish granted, they can see like where that thing came from. And it is a remarkable, obviously very emotional, but inspiring thing. So it is, when I talk about the heart and soul of what I do, that very much is part of it.
There's a theme that's kind of runs through all of your endeavors, which is that it's not about necessarily doing things at scale. It's about connecting with that one person or the one family or the one solopreneur or the one listener or whatever. And if they get it, if you impact them, then likely there will be other people impacted as well. Likely there will be other benefits as well. But there's probably something to be said for, let's just help one specific family, not, like, as you said, you can donate money to research, but if you focus on the one family, the money will still get to research.
Right.
But you get to see that impact one-on-one.
And to that point, from a business perspective, it very much is how I run my philosophy of running my business. Like, I'm not a numbers guy, man. Like, I don't look at my numbers. I don't know my downloads. Like, I could check if I needed to, or if I needed to talk to a sponsor. And it goes for the community too. Like, I think people are so worried about the vanity metrics and growing and scaling the number of people. I don't. I've never placed an ad. I've never done any paid advertising, period. Because I think if you turn your focus, instead of turning your focus away from the people who are already there and to, well, how do I get to the next person? I focus on the people who are already part of the community. Like, and you love on them and you care for them and you like nurture them, or whatever sort of word that you want to use. They will not only be loyal to you, but they will become your most vocal evangelists. So they are the ones who go out and do the marketing for you and bring the right people, as I said before, the right people into the community because they're being referred to by somebody who is already there. That's what organic growth really looks like. That's where like value in the people who are there matters. And again, my attention is never here. It's always on the people who are already there.
Yeah. It's probably, it's a good segue into the, where is podcasting today? Because 20 years ago, it's not entirely clear that anybody would bring anybody anywhere. Right? Like, if your podcast had 3 listeners, it was your mom, your aunt, and your test download, and nothing was probably going to change. Seeing the evolution of the medium, but specifically the audience and size and scale of the audience. Where do you feel we are on sort of the grand horizon for podcasting? Are we towards peak? Are we at peak podcasting, or are we still in the middle?
I think we are. We continue to ride the podcast. The podcasting is like a sine wave, right, man? It's been like, every few years, like, this is it. This is the renaissance of podcasting. It's the death of podcasting. It's the rebirth. It's the podcasting is the phoenix rising from the ashes. I still wave the podcasting flag very, very hard. I think it is the most intimate medium. I still think it's the medium that affords the greatest opportunity, especially to be a big fish in a relatively small pond, without going too far into the number. The number of active podcasts versus the number that are sort of in the Spotify or Apple Podcast Store is remarkably, like, there's a huge nexus between the two of those. I think it's easier to be discovered and to be heard and to make an impact in podcasting than maybe I think I'm going to start a YouTube channel tomorrow, and I'm going to hope that I can be heard in this very, very crowded, very, very noisy space. I think there's a million and one reasons why you should podcast, and why that I think that there's fantastic opportunity there. Yes, your podcast can be repurposed, and you can also be video, and could also be all these other things too, as you were saying earlier. But for me, podcasting is still like the heart of what I do, and it's the most important and still fun part of the content I create.
Yeah. Do you get concerned about the next wave of audience that's coming more and more from the TikTok short attention span generation? Are people going to grow out of it? And I guess that's my question.
I just talked about this at Momentum. I do like a little fireside chat at the very end and talk about things that I think are coming or what we expect. I think long form content is going to, maybe we're on the sine wave again. I think there's going to be a return to long form content, because there's no depth for the 15-second, video. I think there's a lot less of a connection between the audience and the creator in those very short form videos. I think attention spans will start to grow as we want more. It's not about the number of videos we're going to get to watch as opposed to the value that we're getting from it, even in terms of the written word as well. I do a long form show. I like to, dig deep and get into the details, because, that's why your phone has a pause button, because you don't have to, like terrestrial radio, you don't have to stop and listen before you get out of the car. You can listen on the way there and hopefully listen on the way back. So I do think there will be a shift. I think we're already starting to see that, a shift towards a desire for longer form content. Not everybody's a podcast listener. Not everybody consumes content that way. And I think it's a very difficult road to hoe to get somebody who does not consume audio content that way to become one.
Yeah.
But now with the tools that allow you to record a podcast and push it out to YouTube and things like that, it opens up the door for people to be video creators without having to worry about creating video. And
sure. Yeah. And I can see how that generation still isn't going to pivot to terrestrial radio, right? Like the TikTok generation is not going to be like, you know what, actually drive time radio is my jam. So that they are, but you're right. They're seeking connection and those sorts of things. So they're going to have to find it from somewhere, but I don't see it being terrestrial radio. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it's going to be short form YouTubers turning into long form YouTubers, or TikTokers turning into long form people. I think it's going to end up being different personalities. Is there something that as an industry podcasters should be doing differently to make sure that we are capturing, for lack of a better word, those people and bringing them over? Or is it just if you keep putting out good content, if you keep catering to your community, they'll bring in the right people?
I think consistency is key in this medium. We are creatures of habit. And I think one thing about podcasting is we become part of people's routine. My show comes out on Monday. People are it's going to be their drive time on the way to work. I do a very family-friendly show. I know people who are bus drivers who play the podcast for the kids on the bus, which is wild and crazy for me. Or you do it when you walk the dog or go to the gym. So consistency is key, because There's sometimes like my podcast doesn't show up at the time on Monday or Tuesday. I'll start getting emails like, "Hey man, are you okay? Are you dead? Is everything like?" Or they'll literally like, they'll message my wife and be like, "Is Lou okay? Like the show was supposed to start at 7:30 on Wednesday. He's not here," which it shows again that the depth of the connection that you have, but how important it is that you become part of people's routine.
Right. And how about 10 years from now? What does podcasting look like in the year 2035, let's say?
I just came from a podcast conference and I was talking to a couple, and I was trying to think about that. Like, what are the next steps? What is the evolution of this medium going to look like? You can't, other than like embedding something in our head so we can just sort of like tap a button and listen to podcasts. Is it from a technology perspective? Is it the way that people are consuming content? I honestly, I don't know. It's the intriguing part of the medium. Where is attention going to be? How are people going to be wanting to consume content? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Like, where do you think this is going? And to that point, is it something that people should be investing in, not just in the short term, but in the long term?
I mean, I'm a terrible futurist, so I'm like the podcast. Somebody told me about podcast in 2004. I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Please don't ever speak to me about this again. Like, oh yeah, I can download something on my iPod and take it on the train and listen to. Okay, yeah, thanks. So my track record is not great, which actually gives me a lot of freedom to make bold predictions. I mean, AI is the real question mark around what the future looks like in most things today. At the podcast conference, there was a lot of, I described it as fun, like fear, uncertainty, and doubt around it, which is like all the wrong emotions to be feeling. It's like teeny bit of excitement, and everything else is scary and whatever. Which is, it's early, right? So whenever it's early, things look scary. In the middle, everything looks terrible, and then the other side is something else. And so, one of the things I've been playing with, I don't know if you've looked at it yet, is Google's thing where it'll make you a podcast out of Notebook LM. And it's a very talking about how do we bridge the gap from people who are like the TikTok generation to consuming long form stuff. It gave me a 12-minute podcast of two AI voices talking, as opposed to me reading probably would have been 180 pages of the PDFs that I fed it. And so it's like, did I have the attention span to read 180 pages of PDFs? I did not. Did I have the attention span to listen to all 12 minutes of the AI generated thing? I did. And probably the next evolution of that subject, if I was interested in it, would be me now going and finding a longer form podcast of it that's probably not AI, of like the actual author talking now and talking to people about it. So, on one hand, it can be an adoption assistant for people moving to something like long form content. But whenever I hear people talking about AI, I get confused about.
Somebody gave a presentation on AI at my conference and showed Notebook LM and said, "Look, I fed Notebook LM an interview that I did with a former Disney Imagineer, and there was a full podcast created between two people. You would never know it was AI that paused and emoted and reflected, and the room was silent." And I was like, whoa, like if this, and again, where we are now in AI this is the worst it's ever going to be, right? It's only going to get better and better. Like imagine, and I think it's so, that's why, again, I go back to the relation. Like it's so important that you create a relationship with your audience, because they need to come for you, for the things that you are going to say. Because what's going to happen is, you can say, I want to hear a podcast about, the history of Disneyland. Well, I'm going to go to whatever it's going to be and say, give me a podcast about the history of the Disneyland. It's going to go out, create this thing probably real time, and allow this imaginary discussion to go on between two people that don't exist, but it's going to feed you for the content that you want. I think it's why that the humanity aspect of it is going to be so important. It's wonderfully scary and intriguing. And again, if this is just where we are scratching the surface, forget 10 years down the road. Let's have this conversation again next year.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Things are going to evolve now at a much more rapid pace. Like my standard joke 2 years ago was like, I'll be a lot more concerned about AI when I can stick my hands in a hand dryer and it recognizes them as hands, which today it only does half the time. Or I put my hands under a sink and it's like, those aren't hands. I refuse to turn the water on. Like that's where technology was 2 years ago, right? It's like we can't identify hands when its only job is to identify hands.
All I know is I'm hedging my bets. I'm being very nice to my AI overlords. Like I say please and thank you when I write everything, just in case.
Yes. Alexa, I'm sorry for what I said to you last night. Right. I was upset. There's like talk about the sine wave. There's like a sine wave of technology, and the analogies I've found so far to at least the emotions people seem to have around it. I draw another music industry analogy, which is like Pro Tools, digital editing. Oh no, you're gonna ruin everything that is music. Music is recorded in an analog room on tape, and if you don't record it on an analog room on tape, that's cheating, and that's the computers taking. The reality is, the same bands that were recording on analog are now recording on digital, and Pro Tools lets them do lots of cool stuff they weren't able to do before. But ultimately, it's a tool to make content, and like the for your past profession, it's always like AI isn't going to put lawyers out of business, but it's going to put lawyers who don't use AI out of business.
Right.
I feel like it's kind of the same thing with podcasts, right? It's like, I don't know that people aren't going to listen to you because you could have Notebook LM make a long form thing about Disney. Mm-hmm. But I do think AI is going to help you prepare a lot better to do your show on Disney.
No doubt.
And like, that's kind of the difference, right? Is like, I still want the lawyer standing up in court giving the argument. But I'm okay, getting charged 70 billable less hours because you had ChatGPT write your bullet points that you were going to use in your cross-examination, let's say. So it's a tool in the same, and it, CGI will be the end of movies. Oh no, and actors. Nobody's ever going to use an actor again because we have CGI. Like, you go back in time for all the technology things, and it's like, no, actually, it's just a tool that now actors interact with the CGI. And now, instead of having to make a shitty looking movie about outer space, you get to make a really good looking movie about outer space. So that's where I feel like it is. It obviously has, potential to be all these crazy things, but like everything, at least on the technology company side of the house, OpenAI now raising money, like everybody has a profit motive. Mm-hmm. All the profit goes away when there's nobody left to buy your service. Like, AI has replaced everybody, gets paid nothing. There's nobody to buy AI anymore, right? Like at some point, the capital markets will take care of the whole, like, everything can't be replaced with AI or there's no market left. So it's just it's a skill, it's a tool. We need to learn how to use it. To your point, what does it look like in 10 years? I don't know.
Right, but it's a skill and a tool. It's not a replacement. Like I talk about this all the time, and especially like I see the generation behind us and how much they lean into it. I'm like, let it make you more efficient, let it make you more effective, but it still has to be authentically you. And if I think some of the younger kids and generation, we can tell when something's written by AI. Like, I can tell when the paragraph before was written by you and you just couldn't figure out how to finish up your essay.
Yeah.
It's much more apparent than you think it is, because I know you don't talk or write like that.
Right. Or even, like, again, going back to my Pro Tools analogy, like the hardest thing in the history of the world for music is recording a drum track for a studio album, because drummers suck. Right? Like, to play for 3.5 minutes straight and hit every note within 50 milliseconds of where it's supposed to be is hard. Mm-hmm. And would drive studio engineers crazy. And like, here comes Pro Tools. Now we don't need drummers. Right? We can just like lay the drum track in Pro Tools. And yet every band still has a drummer.
Yeah.
No, drummers have not been, there's not a single drummer that no longer has a job because
there's also, like, and I think it just maybe the Catholic Italian guilt in me. Sometimes I'm like, well, am I cheating? Like, am I cheating by using AI?
Yes.
And I think we have to get, it is, but it's like, and that's where I think there's that fine line between using it as a tool and using it to sort of replace and
Well,
it can be cheating, but it also could be helpful.
Like so there's where the cheating, in the sense that yes, it's cheating because everybody cheats, because of course you have to cheat because you have to cheat. Like, do bands have drummers now? Yes. Is there an engineer dragging a little note over to the 100 millisecond slider in Pro Tools? Yes. Is that cheating? Maybe. It's still the original drum track. It's just been, cheated a little bit so that the guitar doesn't now sound out of time. But some of the cheating comes from that, we said at the beginning, right? Like, how dare, somebody monetize their creative art? How dare somebody, use an AI editor in their creative art? They're not very far apart at all on the thought lines. And I think some of it is the uniqueness of this medium. Like you said, it's different, but like the way people were talking on stage, were like, we need a disclaimer and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, does Seinfeld need a disclaimer that says like this was actually not one long 30-minute, like that they shot multiple cameras and like this was actually 50 takes, and does Star Wars need a disclaimer that says, just so you know, we weren't actually in outer space fighting droids. There were like, this was CGI. Like, I
mean, Instagram has the toggle now, right? The toggle when you make a post that you used AI to do it, and to what end?
Go Instagram, 10 years, hashtag no filter, right? It was like filters are cheating. Now I have to say hashtag no filter if I posted a real photo. Like there's some places where we agree in advance to the suspension of disbelief, right? Which is why a movie doesn't need a disclaimer for the first 30 minutes explaining that like nobody was actually killed. The droids don't actually exist. We're not actually in outer space. People that still breathe oxygen. Like you just sort of went in going, I expect to be lied to, right? I'm here. I paid my $10. Please lie to me. And something about podcasting, at least in our own minds, is like people paid $10 to not be lied to. Mm-hmm. Like they paid to see the unedited footage and the not AI and the this, that, and the other. And in the reality, what people normally want to pay for is really good content that appeals to them.
Well, I think this is, and maybe this is the recovering attorney in me coming out too. I think if it hasn't happened yet, it's going to happen very soon. With, we've seen tons of like deep fake videos where all of a sudden Morgan Freeman is dancing, in some giant head. But at my conference, again, the AI learning is so good now. They uploaded like a 2-minute clip of me speaking, and there was an audio clip of me giving a dissertation about Tower of Terror, whatever it is. There was no way to tell that it wasn't me. When does that first litigation start? Or somebody say, well, yeah, I heard Lou Mongello say A, B, and C. And all of a sudden now the onus is on me to defend myself that it wasn't me, that it was AI. And then sort of how do we prove that? I think that starts to get into some very interesting, potentially very, very murky and dangerous waters too.
So I'm going to push back out the lawyer in you a little bit. Is the unique part about it that it's AI or that it's cheap and easy? Because I could have paid a voice actor to fake your voice and say something as you for the past 100 years without AI, and people go, "Oh my God, that's Lou Mongello, and he just said that thing." And there have been
it's the ease of access to it, right?
Right, because there have been suits for that too, right? There've been famous people that have sued commercials for using their likeness or whatever, that when it wasn't them and it wasn't their voice and whatever.
It's harder. It's hard for me to say, let me go look in the phone book. Well, how old am I? Let me go look in the phone book and find a voice actor who can do a perfect whomever.
Right.
Where now it's, all I need is a few seconds of this person's voice, and I can make Lou Mongello say whatever I want.
Right.
And, that could potentially be, especially if you're somebody who, not me, but if you are a celebrity, if you are whatever, like yikes in terms of what and how easy it is. It takes 10 seconds for something that, and the potential dangerousness that can from that.
Okay, so let me process what you're saying. It's not that the harm is any different. It's that the proliferation of anybody being able to create the situation, the power of large numbers means there'll have to be some stuff now coming up, because in the past it was only Coca-Cola that could afford to make a fake Brad Pitt talking
Right.
about how much he enjoyed Cherry Coke. Whereas now 50,000 people can make Brad Pitt say anything, and Shakespeare and monkeys on typewriters, somebody's going to say something that's going to get that's now suable.
And the voice actor, like he or she might be close, but like this is it. Like that is the voice, and there is no distinct. That sine wave. You get into Pro Tools, it's going to look exactly like it's Morgan Freeman's voice, as opposed to it's good, but it's a little off.
Right. Interesting. So, more money for lawyers? That's the outcome of AI?
Yeah, I have to imagine conversations that are happening at legal conferences in terms of all the different legal aspects of AI that are here now and that are coming down the pike, and how do you sort of prepare for that?
Sure. Well, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask something I really should ask, which is, I promised to my soon-to-be 8-year-old daughter that we could go to Disney World soon. What is the next thing? What is the new hotness? What is the thing that I should be, as a father about to plan a trip to Disney? What do I need to know in like 30 seconds or less? How do I be cool for my daughter? That's my question. How do I make my daughter think I'm cool?
All right. So Tiana's Bayou Adventure just opened up in Magic Kingdom, which is the old Splash Mountain. It's great. Like, she's going to fall in love with it. The music is great and the visuals are great, and everything else about it. Does she have any like favorite characters or favorite movies?
Yes, but she will hedge against that. So she says she likes everything all the same. So it's a little hard for me to hedge against that, because she's gonna, like any girl her age, she loves princess stories. That would be the constant.
Yeah, there's a Frozen attraction in Epcot, which opened a few years ago, which is the technology is great. The storytelling is fantastic, and it's one of those slightly immersive experiences. I think that's where Disney is starting to evolve to, places like Galaxy's Edge. If you are a Star Wars fan and you see that full-size Millennium Falcon and there's characters roaming around and you pilot the Millennium Falcon and you get to put it into hyperspace, like those are all the things as a kid that we dreamed of being able to do. And now you're able to finally do that. And the immersion, and I think coming down the pike, is almost a more personalized experience when you go to the parks.
Yeah.
Are you coming to World, you said?
Yes.
If you can stay on property and stay in one of, I highly recommend it, because it sort of keeps you immersed in the storytelling bubble for the entire time that you're here. Not like, we have to drive 25 minutes to go to our hotel on 192, and it sort of takes them out of it, because everything is themed, everything is story rich and story immersive.
Awesome. Okay, well, I will attempt to not make my
we'll talk offline, and I'll help you sort of plan out some places to go and places to eat.
And I need to know where Pooh River is, for sure. Or the River of Pooh.
You come here, I will walk with you and your daughter for a half hour, and I will deliver that joke like it's the very first time I ever did it.
Awesome. Lou, thank you so much. This was great. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your thoughtfulness. It is pretty cool to listen to somebody who's recorded probably over 1,000 podcasts, or getting close to it at this point, and you sound just as excited today as you did 20 years ago. So thanks again for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Another round, so much more to talk about. Gonna aim to satisfy with help from CacheFly. Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast. The Anycast podcast, brought to you by CacheFly.